Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Leather History, a Fireside Chat. I'm Doug OKeeffe. I am the host and the producer of the chats, which are a program of the Leather Archives and Museum. Today is February 7th, and it's 2024, and I'm at the home of Brent Sweer in Palm Springs, California. How are you, Brent?
Doing fine, thank you.
Okay. Longtime Leatherman and very, very generously welcoming us into his home. So, I understand you've been watching some of the chats. What are your opinions of some of these interviews, or should I ask?
Well, a lot of people find quite a bit of interest about them and a little knowledge about them that I didn't know. But then you did some chats of people I do know and have known for a long time, and we chatted about it.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Good.
Okay, all right. So how does it feel now that you're on the hot seat?
Well, same old. I've talked to a lot of people, so I mean, people try to put me on the hot seat, but I don't feel being on the hot seat.
Okay, here we go. I always like to start the interviews by asking a little bit about demographics. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, your circumstances.
Well, I was born and raised in the Chicago area. We lived in Oak Park for most of my schooling, and even moved to River Forest in my later years in high school. But I mostly grew up in that area, which was a quite diverse demographics. So we were pretty accepting of everyone and everything that went on. And I wouldn't say it was a liberal, but I would say, and they weren't conservative, but they were in the middle.
Okay.
There was a lot of people that were in the mafia connection in the neighborhood, and I actually had met several of them, but it was also a very Jewish community too. And it just was a very I wouldn't say exciting area to grow up in, but it was a very good area to be brought up in.
When we were preparing for this, do I correctly remember you mentioned didn't a lot of the people from your high school eventually come out as gay?
Well, some of them were gay in high school.
Okay, well, that's fair.
But then there were also several teachers that we sort of wondered, and they ran into them in the bar one night.
How was that? How did you feel about that?
Well, the one teacher was my homeroom teacher, and I walked up into him in full leather at the Gold Coast, and it's sort of like, first of all, he didn't know who I was, and me walking up to him and looking him straight in the eye and saying his name, and his jaw dropped, and his friend's jaw dropped, because they thought they were checking out this neat place and no one would know him. And here it is, one of his students is walking up to him.
How did that change your relationship with this person?
Well, it was no change in the relationship. I mean, we didn't have a relationship outside of high school.
Oh, okay.
He was my homeroom teacher.
But I mean, it didn't create angst or tension? Okay.
No.
That's good.
But there was a kid in high school that, he was definitely out and very gay and flamboyant. And after graduation, he went off to college, and he met this guy who was a football player. And they started a relationship, and they were getting into the leather scene. And between high school and when I met him at the bar, he completely changed his personality. He was more comfortable with himself. He was definitely more masculine at that point, and his boyfriend was very masculine, and both of them got into bodybuilding, and so they were very much a part of and got involved with me after that point. Where in high school, I was not comfortable, but then I wasn't totally comfortable letting people know I was gay either. Because I have to say, I know I was turned on by masculine men, but I didn't understand the gay term and what we were be presenting of what gay was. I wasn't. So media and everything else did not feed to me what gay is very well. And I was always very masculine. I did a lot of construction. I worked in the theater in the construction area. And, I also worked at a bowling alley, working on the bowling ring repairs and things like that. So, and I also liked building things. So I never felt I was really gay.
Okay.
Until the first night I walked into the Gold Coast.
We'll come to that. But in your previous statement, you said something that I'd like to explore for a second, and then we'll come back. You mentioned the very Queenie kid from your high school who became very masculine and very secure and everything in the leather scene.
Yes.
We see that a lot in the leather community. What are your thoughts on that?
Like I said, I think people present an idea of what gay is, and people think they have to follow that. And in reality, these people really need to, we need to support the youth to be themselves. I was myself, and I never worried about what other people was thinking. And so I was very comfortable with myself at that point. And he told me that he was more comfortable with himself and being with me more. And he told me that he had the hots for me in high school, but was always afraid to come up because I was just this big masculine guy. And there were rumors going around that I was gay, fed on by a certain person, but it was not. They always got curveballs out of me. No one ever really understood. But that's been the story of my life. People don't understand that I'm gay. They don't believe it that when they're gay, they see that he's gay.
The sense of empowerment, though, and the growth that obviously people go through with that.
Yes.
As I said, we see it a lot. Why do you think that is a common theme in the leather community?
You could say it's part of fitting in. And one of the things that most people have in their life is everyone has to be fit in and be accepted. And so to fit in and be accepted, you have to do this. And we've always had a backlash from other parts of the community to the leather community because of that. And we even have that going on today. It's been going on ever since I came out, and it's going on today, that they don't understand that you can be masculine, you can be yourself, you don't have to play an act. Just be yourself and be comfortable with yourself. You don't need to have approval of others to be yourself. You can just be yourself, accept yourself, and what other people think and talk about you and gossip about you, ignore it.
Yeah. But looping back, when we prepared for this, you mentioned that you had numerous sexual arousals. One of them was Elvis.
Yes.
Do tell us, what was your attraction to Elvis Presley?
There was a Time magazine ad that was out, and I saw it, and Elvis was on it in full leather. And that got me really turned on. Seeing that leather, and we've seen leather on Western movies before, and yeah, that turned on. But seeing Elvis in that, someone I knew in leather, I mean, that really turned me on.
Wow.
And at that young age, I think I was 10 years old when I saw that.
Wow. Well, there's one for Elvis. We've got to give him that.
Yes.
But you also mentioned divers, wetsuits.
Oh, yeah. Our family would take trips down to the Keys for the Christmas holidays. And we had this motor home, and we all pile in there and go down there to the Keys for Christmas. And there were all these divers down in the Keys. And they had their suits hanging out, and I just so wanted to go up and touch them. And then there's one guy that I saw, and he was nicely built, and he had come back and was wearing his dive suit, and I just wanted to go over and touch him. I wanted to feel every curve of his body in that wetsuit. To me, it was rubber. I mean, I didn't see what it is today, neoprene. I thought it was rubber, and it looked like rubber.
Maybe in those days it was.
Maybe it was.
Yeah.
I mean, this was in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it could have been a thick rubber that they were wearing, but it was a turn on. And I like things that were tight and showed off to the physique of a man. That's always been a thing for me.
Were you ever able to touch any of these guys?
No.
That's a shame.
I was shy, and I was only 12, 13 years old. And so there was a lot of men that I've wanted to go touch, but I didn't.
Is there another example of someone you could depict, another maybe celebrity or something?
Wild, Wild West. There was a lot of leather, and I love those tight leather chaps on that. That did arouse me, and he was so good looking. Yeah, I wanted to touch that too.
Okay. Healthy boy then, weren't you?
Yes, and I had him also in my school. I mean, in elementary school, I had the gym coach. I mean, he was just so hot too, and hairy. And one of the things that I hit puberty before everyone else. So, I mean, I started growing the hair and everything. And everyone would be pointing and giggling. And the gym coach pulled me aside and said, and he had his shirt off at the time, and he says, "You're growing to be a man. They're not there yet. Part of what they're doing is jealousy," because I was getting afraid to take a shower. Because I felt it was like ridicule.
Yeah.
And he said, "Don't worry about it." And he said that when he first started teaching, he did shower at the end of the day with the students, and they did the same thing. But they weren't doing the giggling and comments. They were just doing a lot of the pointing and looking. And so he stopped doing that. But he says, but his point was that I still needed to take the shower, and that I just need to get relaxed with it, and they're going to start changing soon too. But he you look at his height and his big long hair, and because he had nice long hair, and I like that. But then when I got into high school, it was the first week I was in the school, and I was walking down the hallway, and the football coach came up to me. Big, tall Swedish guy. He was 6'2", washed blonde hair, and then black. You can see the black hair coming out of his shirt. And he was built like a shit brick house. And,
sounds hot.
Oh yeah. For 4 years, fantasized about playing with him.
Uh,
But the funny thing is he wanted me to be on the football team. And I had done football the year before in my last year of elementary, and I was not that thrilled with it. So I decided I just didn't want to get into it. There were other things I wanted to get into. I had just been hired by the theater, and so I wanted to do that more than play football, and that would have affected my football. Football would have affected theater, I should say.
yes.
But all during high school, it seemed like he always had a close attention to me. I had him in several of my classes in freshman year, and then I also had him the sophomore year. They would pull down upper students to help with the freshmen in the sophomore and junior classes, and he always was pulling me down for that. So I think he had his eye on me, and the unfortunate thing is I found out afterwards that, yeah, I could have. How
did you find that out?
Some people from my high school in the bars, it was several years later, and they told me, yeah, he was gay, and there were certain very masculine young men that he liked having around. I don't know if he ever did anything, but they said, yeah. And apparently a student after he left the high school had an affair with him.
Oh, scandalous.
Scandalous.
Yes.
And I tried to go back years later to find out if he was still at the high school, how to get a hold of him. And no information on him.
Oh. You never did find him?
No.
It's a shame.
John has always been in my heart.
There's always one.
I had a bad relationship where the guy constantly wanted sex, and I had to think about John to have sex with this guy.
Oh.
It's sort of like, no.
But you came out very young, and you told me that you told me a lot about the Chicago scene that you experienced.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to ask, how did you even know that the sort of leather bars, the rougher bars, even existed at that age?
I didn't.
Okay.
We didn't have any of the things that you would look at to go looking for places like that. But my twin brother had been out getting quite sexual for many years, and he knew about it.
Okay.
And he was constantly going through my stuff, and he knew I was into men.
Okay.
Real men. And not young ones, and not thin or anything like that, just big, strong, masculine men. So he was actually the one. We were at home with Thanksgiving, and right after Thanksgiving dinner, he said, "We're going out." I go, "Oh," and we're taking your car. Oh. And we drove down town, and he took me to the Gold Coast.
Now, for the benefit of the audience, you're talking about bars that aren't in Chicago anymore, but people constantly sort of idolize them.
Yes.
So tell us about these places, these bars that you knew at that time.
Well, the first one was the Gold Coast. That's the first one I went into. It was an extremely tall bar. Yeah, I mean, it had 20-foot ceilings, but it was long and narrow. So it was probably only about 30 feet across.
Oh, wow.
But it went back probably about 100 feet, and the bar was sitting in the middle of the bar. And people just continually circled around the bar. And in the back, you had a pool table in the bathrooms, And then in the front, they had you can call it a reception area, an area where it was large enough where people coming into the bar can get the orientation because you're coming in from a well-lit street to a very dark bar. And so you have to get your eyes oriented to what's going around. And then you got all these men stacked up against each other. And that's when I first walked into the Gold Coast. And then the second bar I walked into was Touche's. Touche's was completely different. It was about the same width as the Gold Coast, but it went back 60 feet. And its ceiling was probably only 8 foot tall. And the bar was a triangle in the middle of the room, and on one of the points of the triangle, you had a fireplace.
Okay.
And that bar too, you can walk completely around. That was the big theme, is you walk around the bar and cruise on people, or they cruise on you, or you lean up against the wall and you check out who's going by. And that's the way the bars were back then. And then another bar I went to after that was the Redoubt, which was different. When you walked into that bar was only 40 by 30.
Small place.
It was small. And the bar again was in the center. So, and you had to have they had these big, huge, heavy doors. And if you couldn't open the door, you couldn't go in. That was their philosophy. And so you had to open this door and go in, and then you walk around and you think, well, this is a small bar. Well, no, the bar continued downstairs in the cellar. So you walk down the cellar and you get down to the bottom of the stairs, and in front of you is this tank with snakes in it. And one of the big things is when they fed the snakes, and they would feed them once a week, and they'd drop some mice in there for the snakes to eat. But then you go in and you had a much larger room downstairs than you did in the upstairs bar. It was about twice the size of the upstairs bar. And the bar was against the wall there, but then it was a big gathering place, and people could get up against the corners and play around and do things like they normally do. Now, all these bars had something like that. The Gold Coast, you went downstairs and you had the same situation. But one of the things about the Gold Coast is there were sections of it that there were no lights in. But in the ceiling of that, there were glass blocks that fed the street lights down into it, and that was the only light you could do. And mostly people would feel their way through there. That's where they had the extra space down there, and things would happen. Now, in these downstairs spaces, you had to be in leather to go to these places. Now, when I originally started in Touche's, they didn't have a space like that, but they had a second floor, and they started remodeling it, and there was a whole big family going on there, and everyone was close to everyone, including David, but I'd help him do the wiring, and he was an electrician, and so he and I worked quite well together because I have an electrical background that my grandfather started with, and so he and I did a lot of the wiring together, and he needed someone to help pull all the wire, and I enjoyed it. It was one of my joys that I had. So, but I was part of that building of that second floor, which you again had a stairs, and it was restricted on who can come up. And so when you got up there, it was a big open area, and there was a little bar, a portable bar against the wall, so you could get drinks up there, and you'd have to go downstairs. But then you had this big open area that was called the club room. You went around the corner, and there was an area that was at the back of the building, and took out the ceiling and opened it up to the roof rafters. So it went way up high.
Okay.
And in the back of that, you had the bathrooms again, above the other bathrooms downstairs. And in there, you had a urinal, a toilet, a bathtub, and a sink. Now, why did we have the bathtub?
That's a good question. Why was it there?
The bathtub was there for those who desired to lay in the bathtub and get pissed on. And yes, people went in there and pissed on them. Yes, I did piss on them.
How noble. Contributing.
I contributed to their joy.
But a moment ago, you mentioned Chuck, and you mean Chuck Renslow. Yes?
Chuck Rodiker.
Chuck Rodiker. I misunderstood you.
Yeah, Chuck Rodiker.
Tell us a little bit about him, as you knew him then.
Chuck was young, very high-spirited, but compared to a lot of owners, he knew how to take care of a bar and his customers. And he told me his secret, why his bars are successful, because he takes care of his employees and he takes care of his customers. And he always makes sure that the customers realize that the money that he's getting out of the bar is going back into the bar and the community.
Huh.
And even Chuck Rodiker understood that.
Yeah.
And you saw some things with Chuck Rodiker that he would do in the community. He didn't do a lot with the bar, but he did a lot in the community. So they each had their own different ways of doing things. But I knew, I played around with the manager of the Gold Coast many times, but I knew the bartenders at the Touche's and some of them at the Gold Coast, and some of them I still know here today. And it's sort of like, my, you've changed from way back then. You were just that little bartender behind the bar, and a cute little bartender.
Tell us more about people you knew, iconic people that went on to be greats in the community.
Well, one of the first ones that I can bring out is Lenny Broberg. I actually met Lenny Broberg in Milwaukee when he lived in Milwaukee before he went out to San Francisco. And Lenny has always been a wonderful performer, an entertainer. And I will say that when I was introduced by Jerry Roberts to him at IML, when he was running for IML, I think that was in 92.
I think that's
92.
Right. Yeah.
And I looked at him and I go, "Oh, Lenny, I know you. You such and such and such a," and you should have seen the look on his face. You know me from back then?
Wow.
But I had an excellent memory back then. And then another person that I just mentioned, Jerry Roberts, he, longtime member of the community who unfortunately recently passed away, but he has always had a place in my heart. And let me see, who else was there? Donovan Ash, the founder of Chains of Brotherhood. He was my boyfriend for a while, and I got involved with him with the magazine, and little did I know he was putting my name in the magazine.
Was that a problem?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't know it. I don't consider myself a very literate person. I did admire him and what he was doing. Another person that was very involved was Glenn Sudaberry. He was very involved in the community. Tom Winfield, who was from one of the clubs I was very close to. Paul Schleicher. Now, I know he's one of the few people I know who's still, well, I can't say I know he's still alive, but he's one of the ones of us that we escaped the getting the AIDS virus. But last I know that he was moving to Portugal with his husband, who I believe he lived in Portugal at the time, and they met over here at some event, and they just got together, and so he ended up moving to Portugal with him. And God, there's so many people I could tell you I've known.
Did you know Chuck Renslow? I
Yes.
mistakenly brought him up a moment ago.
Yes, I knew Chuck Renslow.
Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, he was a very professional person. I know when I ran for IML in '94, his one comment to me, "Yeah, I remember you. You were fucking my manager over the beer cases." And at that time, that sort of told me that, okay, he had a camera on it down there.
Yeah, of course he would.
So he was watching it.
Probably enjoying it.
Maybe.
Who wouldn't watching something like that?
Yeah, but I know after IML was over on Sunday, he said to me that, I'll have to tell you one thing that you taught me. I've lived here in Chicago all my life, and you told me more about this town and that one little trip from the hotel to the Congress Theater than I ever knew.
Wow, that's a statement.
Yeah.
From that man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I took up a lot of Chicago history, and being I have architectural desires when I was younger, I learned a lot about the architecture and the design of the city. And being that close to Chicago, you did learn a lot about the city.
Yeah. You said that you were a son to the community.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Tell us about that.
When I came out, I was young, and there were a lot of people in the community from the clubs scene that basically took me under their arms and helped guided me. It wasn't for sexual purposes, but it was, they saw me as someone that should be in the community and was young and spirited, but still was very sound-based. One of the things that reason they were able to do things with me is because I didn't drink. And I never acquired a taste for alcohol. I mean, I do have an occasional wine now and then, but beer, no way. Never acquired a taste for that. So there were a lot of, that got me into the bar. Both Chuck and Chuck both
Yes.
knew that I was, when they changed the law from 18 to 19, because that was right after I turned 18, and they just told me, you're not drinking, we're not really going to get in trouble. They can't accuse us of selling you alcohol because you don't drink.
Right.
And every bartender knows that. So you're not a problem for that. And there was only one bar that had an issue with that.
Which one?
Readout.
Oh, okay.
And they didn't know until I was 22 and a half or 21 and a half. But I'd been going in there and getting my sodas for years. But I had a teacher in college that had the hots for me. And not one of my personal teachers, but he saw me out in the bar. And he went and looked me up in the college and then started telling everyone I was underage. And that's how I got in trouble with the readout. But Chuck and Chuck both understood that I was not of age, but I don't drink. So they knew that they couldn't get any problems from it.
Right.
Because the way the Chicago laws were, it didn't say that you cannot be 21 to enter the bar. It was 21 to drink alcohol.
Yes.
So that was the difference. So, but a lot of the clubs took me under their arm, and I did a lot of things with the clubs. And one of the things that they did is if there was a person in the community that was deemed to be hazardous or didn't really care about you, they told me about it. Stay away from this person, this is why. And so it made it a lot safer for me, but I do know a lot of, I've had a few friends that I know that ended up losing their life because of people like that.
Oh.
And one of them was someone from the community, an S&M community, and it was from the Lake County murders, if you ever heard about that, but there were 17 men that he ended up killing in Chicago and taking their bodies to Lake County, Indiana, and dumping the bodies there. And one of them they were able to find a connection to Chicago. Once they found that one connection with Chicago, they connected all the rest of them from Chicago and were able to find it down to that one person.
My gosh.
So,
You mentioned clubs just a moment ago. For historical circumstances, would you please tell us which ones?
well, the Cossacks were one of them that I was close with. Trade Winds, the Knights, and Second City were the main clubs that were around at that time. And one of them was a bike club, but most of them were men's clubs.
Okay.
Which, when you're in that kind of community, having that type of relationship of people you can count on to help with and do things with each other was a very important thing to do.
Yes.
And you also had Hellfire, which was the S&M club.
Yes.
I was very close with quite a few people in that club in the early years. And I had a van that I used for work, but Hellfire needed help getting their stuff from Chicago to Douglas Dunes for their run, or retreat.
Okay.
I guess that's what would be a better word, or the retreat. And I would load up my van and we'd drive out there, but I wouldn't stay. And I drop the stuff off, and then I come back on Monday and pick the stuff up and bring it back to Chicago. And one of my friends, Steve Hauser, I remembered that. Steve Hauser, he said, "Why do you not stay for the weekend? You're welcome. You've done all this work for us." And I says, "Because you have one thing that is a requirement, and that is that everyone that goes out to the event must present a sexual whatever, or a scene. And I do not perform scenes. I do a one-on-one contact scene. And a lot of their members have seen me in their dungeon with one of their members and what I do to them. And it turned them on, but it was not something that I wanted to get in front of 30 or 40 men and say, this is how you do this is how you do that. This is why I do this. And that's not who I am. I could probably do that more now, but back then.
Building on that comment, actually, because it opened the door to something here I really wanted to bring up. You gotta listen. You mentioned, and we alluded to this a little earlier in the interview here, depicting your development, who you are in the community, your look, your boots. This is something definitive, and I loved it when we talked about this in preparation. So would you share that with us, please?
Well, for me, I don't fit an image. I mean, when I first came out, I think the first thing I bought was a leather vest. And the second thing I bought was a pair of leather chaps, which I still have in the closet. And then the third thing that I got was my shot motorcycle jacket. That made me feel good. Now, the different items that I wore was more than just to wear them in the bar. They were to wear them in bed too. Now, before I even started going to the bar, I had my harness boots already. So, and I had gotten those in high school. I'd gone to Sears and I saw these boots. And, oh, I like these boots. That's when Sears had good boots.
Yeah.
And so for many years, that's where I got my boots, was at Sears. And they were I guess they were 12-inch high or 14-inch high harness boots.
Yeah.
And those were my first boots. But to me, I just felt so comfortable in what I was wearing. And I knew that, hey, this turns me on. I didn't have, and I've seen stuff on other people, and I know that a lot of the things that I choose to wear are things I like, not what other people think I should.
Sure.
There's so many people out there today that they have to fit this specific image and have to meet the certain requirements, and they don't want it wrinkled.
Yeah.
Well, you got to have it wrinkled at some point. But the good thing is when I first started going to male hide leathers, they really told me about what to look for and how leather should fit on a man. You just don't throw leather on. Leather has to be shaped for that man's body and should be made to emphasize and promote certain things. So lift and separate and total exposure of a point of interest. And one of the things that I've always had a problem with a lot of, especially today, is I've always had a big butt. And they always knew how to handle making leather for me, whether it be pants, chaps, whatever. They knew where it was going to sit on me, and they knew how it was going to fit and how to make it. And so they were very skilled people. Yeah. And so having that as your first experience is, and someone to really tell you. So when I talk to younger people today, I explain that. You just can't throw leather on. Now, some people, they just have nothing to really exaggerate or lift and separate. So it's a little hard to get them, but you can make some look good in it, but some people, it's just hanging on them. And that's the sad part about it, is when leather just hangs on someone. Yeah. One of the things that I have in common in my life on leather is I don't wear leather. Leather wears me.
Strong statement.
And I won't wear it if it doesn't look good on me. And you have to be happy with what you're wearing.
Yeah. Before we move on to the second part of this, I'd like to backtrack slightly. You competed in IML 1994?
Yes.
What title did you represent?
I was Floyd's Mr. Leather.
Okay. Where is that? Or where was that?
Floyd's was in Long Beach, California.
Okay.
And it was a country western leather bar.
Okay.
And I was into country western all my life. I always listened to country music on and off. But then I've also listened to disco on and off, and what they call dance music now. It was a very masculine bar, and I felt more comfortable at representing them than I did in other bars here in Los Angeles. One of the bars, I just felt that there's no way I can represent them. And another bar, they said there's no way I'm going to represent them.
Well, with the history you brought and that title, how did you place at IML?
I don't know. I say I ended up 58 out of 56 contestants.
Why do you say that?
because I didn't make the top 20.
Okay.
And years later, I had some people, because I kept saying that, they come up and said, no, you were a lot closer than that. You almost made it. But I do know that when I finished IML, a lot of the judges came up and said, we made a mistake with you.
Wow. That's strong.
And they wanted me to run again.
Wow.
I had 5 judges tell me that. And
strong statement.
Part of the reason is at that time it was just an interview first. So you went in and did their interview.
Yeah.
Well, when you're number 4 in the first thing in the morning, they're not awake yet. They're not really knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
They're not paying much attention.
Yeah.
So it was a hard spot to be in. Usually it's the first ones and the last ones are the hard spots.
Sure.
And there were 4 very hot men in my group. And then there was me. I think at that time they took 4 people out of each group, I think is what it was. They had certain people out of each group that would make it onto the possible, and then they would work that. And I know that internationals got extra points over locals, or in the United States at that time.
Yes.
And then there was another person that came along, and the same thing happened to him. They said, you should have won it. And because my year, everyone kept coming up to me, we thought you won it. We were all set that you were going to be IML that year. And then when you didn't make the cut, it was all up in the air. We didn't know what was going on.
Wow.
And this is my counterparts on stage. And it was very interesting that there's still a lot of them that were in my class that still come up to me. And like Mark Ballinger, who you did, he was in my class.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so many come up to me years later and says, I was at IML I was running when you were running. And we thought you won.
Wow.
So I still get that, but it just didn't happen. And I was happily representing the bar, and I did not go with the aspect that I have to win this. I was going representing my bar and doing the best I can, knowing what I knew about IML from its beginning. I mean, I was there at the first IML.
Wow. We don't meet many people who were.
Yeah. And I know that it's sort of funny. I just had my tongue on the floor most of that weekend. But when we went to the contest, to me, I was getting smoked out because this was at the Park West Theater. And this is back when they dropped the ceiling because of energy costs. And so the ceiling was very low, and so it was very smoky, and the ventilation was not very good. And so, it made I wasn't paying much attention to what was going on, but I was there with Donovan and Sudsy. We were sitting at this table, and it's sort of like at one point, I just had to get up and go out. And I didn't want to go back in. So I didn't see the end of it.
Okay.
But I had an idea, but I had tried to, when I was still in Chicago, I had to try to run for IML with the bars there too. But my one goal was I wanted the motorcycle.
Oh, the winning motorcycle.
The winning motorcycle.
Yes.
Which I don't know anyone who's ever collected it.
I believe my year, the winner did. Remy Collette out of Toronto. I believe
he did.
I believe he did.
Yeah, because I know most of them didn't want the motorcycle.
That surprises me, but who am I?
Yeah. And I don't think they had a motorcycle offered by the time in '94.
But that brings us then to the next part of this that is very important.
Yes.
Let's talk about the Los Angeles Leather Coalition, bringing you here to the West Coast.
Los Angeles Leather Coalition is an organization that I started. It's one of the organizations I've started over the years. And its originally primary purpose was getting all the organizations in the community to work together to bring equality. There was a certain bar owner that didn't like the motorcycle clubs, but liked certain clubs more than other, and so would treat everyone differently.
Sure.
And the one group that he really liked was the Golden Gate Police Officers Association. And he felt that was going to make his bar a better bar than all of the bars if you just had certain people and didn't want the motorcycle clubs or the men's clubs anymore. In '94, I started seeing a lot of what was going on with this, and I was trying to see if I could get it going. When Mark Mallon became a Long Beach Leather, I tried to get him involved with it, but he was more interested about what he wanted to do and what he wanted to, so he didn't want to deal with it either. But I thought he would, since he was a member of a motorcycle club down there, and they were getting treated just as badly as the club I'm in now. I just felt a unified community was a much better situation for Los Angeles to have. The clubs had been dying out for a long period of time at that point. So then when William Schindler ended up being Mr. LA Leather, I asked him if he would like to be involved with that. He helped me get the organization started, and we went to the clubs and told the clubs, this is what we're proposing to do, and this is what we'd like to do. Because all the clubs were feeling the effects, and being the clubs had members from the uniform clubs to the motorcycle clubs to the men's clubs. So there was a lot of interaction and there was a lot of gossip, but no one was doing anything. And even between the Police Officers Association and the bike clubs. So we got all the clubs together, and I gave them the format of what I wanted to see. But I said, one of the things that I want to see is we do fundraisers, which was one of the things that the first ladies of the clubs did. But there were so few clubs now, and the first ladies organization wasn't doing anything anymore, which wasn't an organization. It was just the first ladies of the clubs getting together and have their tea.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. That's how initially that the first the Los Angeles Leather Coalition started. And one of the things that proposed to the group that we do the leather contest. And I initially was opposed to it because the bars were doing it. But the situation is the bars were having a hard time with the financials of sending people off to IML.
Sure.
And so a lot of the bars were not doing the contests anymore. And so I saw, okay, if we have someone being sent from the community, and I thought San Francisco was already doing that. So I thought I was taking it off of someone else. And so I developed a contest where all the bars would do a feeder contest into LA Leather. And the bars liked that idea because then they didn't have to be responsible for sending someone to Chicago.
Yeah.
And so they would do the feeder contest and send it into this contest. And so, but I had to set up how the contest was to be done and the requirements and all that. And one of the things that was a big thing back then is people were not liking the sash. They didn't want to see a sash anymore. They wanted a vest because they'll wear a vest.
Yeah.
Well, my comment has been, if you're going to be a sash queen, you're going to have a sash. But the way the organization figured it out, because it was so expensive to have sashes made, and then you had the situation where you had the vest too. So what we had come up and decided that, okay, the winner will get a vest. And I designed the sash that is a progressive sash.
Yeah.
And the progressive sash was to be worn, and we picked a date 20 times, so there'll be 20 titles on it. And on the back, because one of the things that I felt that I missed out on is I didn't know who was before me when I wore Mr. Floyd's, and now that's gone.
Yeah.
So I wanted all the names on the back of the sash.
Yeah.
So we put these nameplates on the back of the sash for 20 years. And then most recently, we had to replace the sash because after 20 years, it starts getting worn.
Yeah, wears off.
But the funny thing is back in the early 2000s when no one wanted the sash, they wanted the vest. Now these guys that are wearing it now, I mean, it's like a big thing that they have it on. We had this one, I mean, he was wearing it to pool parties with nothing on, just a sash. He was wearing it to sex parties. And I do know a lot of people out there, they want to get done by a sash.
Sure.
I'll watch my language too at some point.
This is going to be the main part here that I think a lot of people really want to know.
Okay.
The Satyrs.
The Satyrs.
Tell us about that.
Well, when I came to LA, there were a lot of different clubs, and I was still a member of a club back in Chicago that I founded.
Old Rock. Yes.
Old Rock, yes. And so coming to LA, I mean, I was looking at clubs. Well, I didn't know how the clubs worked out here. They definitely weren't like the clubs in Chicago, where some clubs you had pledge ships, and some clubs like the Old Rock, it was sort of like, you want to be a member? Here's what you have to do. You pay your check and you're a member. When I came to LA, each club had its own different thing. Now, the Satyrs, theirs is the oldest club, so basically there was a lot of secrecy going on. When you joined when the Satyrs picked you to be in their club, you're at an event one day and they call you up on stage and put a vest on.
Oh, okay.
And from that point on, you have full membership. There's no pledgeship or anything. Basically, they figured if you had done something before that was considered your pledge. Okay. But being it was a secret club, once the club voted it in, that was it. Okay. You're part of the family. And I use the word family very seriously because you're just not a member. Yes. And you take care of each other. Now, when I first came out, I was nabbed up by the Blue Max. And they did the same thing, came up to me, you're now a member of the Blue Max. So like, ooh. I've experienced clubs in Chicago and how they worked, and I was happy with that. It wasn't like that out here. It was a very problematic time for me. There were people in the club that didn't like me, and they did things to make sure you knew that you were not welcome. And then there were other people in the club that were just very welcoming and wanted me in the club. And so it was a very difficult, but I ended up, they were made it sure that I left the club. Let's put it that way. And so I left the club, and then the Warriors, they wanted me in, and I'd been close friends with several of the Warriors. It was just not a good fit. And then I also was involved with the Oedipus. The Oedipus is the second oldest club, and they were completely different. They were very much more out there, more, we're going to announce we're gay. Where the Satyrs were they didn't let people wouldn't know they were a gay club unless you were in the club or people that knew the club. I know that Rick Wozniak was the one person who was definitely trying to get me into Satyrs. And he did that when he was president. I was invited to several functions to let people get to know me. And it took years for them to finally vote me into the club. And that was in 1998.
Okay.
Where they finally voted me into the club and said, yes, we do want them in. Like any dysfunctional family, you always have your issues going on, but the thing is everyone is there for everyone else in the club. Support what needs to be done, and there's certain people that have certain skills and you rely on those skills. And other people have other skills and you try to promote those skills, and there's people who want your skills and you try to teach them those skills. And so it's a work and learning with each other, and that includes in the motorcycle riding. I have been a rider since 1980 when I first got my first motorcycle, which was a gift to me. I've never looked back on it. I've always enjoyed it, always wanted one. And yeah, I do have a big fancy motorcycle now, but I still have other motorcycles that aren't so fancy.
You said that the Satyrs are a working group. What does that mean?
It's a working group, which means that when we put on an event, we are working it. And every member is to participate in it. Like our anniversary parties are what we call off-year anniversary parties. It's a very big working time for us, where we not only cooking the food, we are setting up the bar, we're serving the bar, we're setting up the tables, we're setting up chairs, we're doing the cleanup afterwards. One of the places we would be at is Larry Burton's house, and we'd be washing his floors on Sunday afternoon after clearing our stuff out of the house. So a lot of what we do is working now. Our run, besides our anniversary, is the oldest gay event.
And that is?
Badger Flats.
There we go. Badger Flats.
Yes. And Badger Flats is a campground, group campground in the Sierras, that the only thing you find there right now is bear lockers and outhouses.
Wow.
So we have to bring in all the kitchen stuff, all the pots and pans, places to wash dishes, showers so people could take showers, and a stage and sound system for music to play. And so we set all that up. Now, when I first started in the club, there were I think there were 7 or 8 generators, all kinds of lights that had to be powered, sound system. So there were a lot of things that had to be organized. And I know that over the last 20 plus years that I've been in the club, that's over 25 years now. I've got it down to 3 generators.
Oh.
And then we have a couple refrigeration units that we bring out.
What do you feel are the Satyrs' greatest achievements?
Besides the longevity.
Which is in itself a very big piece.
Yeah. And putting on Badger, which one of the things that my feeling about Badger is you have a lot of straight men where they take their young men and they take them off on a camping trip and introduce them to the wild and being out in the manliness. Well, for the gay community, the youth in the gay community, that's what Badger should be to them. And because it's a very warm place, very accepting place. And we've had all kinds of people up there. And even the people you figure okay, they're going to worry about breaking their nails. They're down there getting dirty and grimy and shoveling and hauling wood.
Excuse me, my gosh.
Really getting into the joy of it and working with other people. And I think that's the big thing for it, is these younger people get the joy of being able to work with different aged people and intermingling, because we have people from their 20s all the way up to their 80s going to this run. So you get to meet and socialize, and it's not like a pickup at a bar.
Yeah, totally different. Yeah.
But one of the things that the start of Badger back in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, it was a place that a lot of gay men could go and be themselves.
Sure.
Without the eye of the law looking down on them, because even though it wasn't covered under sheriff, but since it was national forest and national land, they couldn't do anything about what was going on. And there was no sodomy laws in the federal government. So anything done on federal land, there's nothing anyone can do about it. And so that was a big achievement. But one of the things that event has done too is the locals have relied on the business that has brought up to that community up there between Lakeside and Shaver Lake, because gay men spend money and they're going to go shopping for things that we may not have or they want above what we have, and so they will go and spend money. And I know one of the stores during the worst drought, when people weren't going up there, she says we were the only reasons that she stayed open.
Wow. Interested people may want to explore the Satyrs. How can they do that?
Well, they can go to our website, satyrsmc.org, and they can look up about it. They can see our calendar. They can see a bit of the history. If they want to find out about the history, there is a documentary out that I was involved with in my early years of being in the club, that Original Pride.
Yes.
And there's some information, but we're still trying to work on getting something else out that is more detailed and a lot of stuff that went on, because people kept coming back to us that we didn't get, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of questions that were brought up that haven't been answered. And so, yeah, those should be answered. Gary Bowie had started on that project, but unfortunately he passed away with COVID. He was one of the first people who caught it and passed away from it. And so we got all the stuff. It's just getting someone in. And we have a lot of people now that are interested in getting involved with us and coming in and helping us work with that.
How do you want to be remembered by the community?
Well, one wish would be, I want to be the hottest man anyone's ever seen, but I know that's never going to happen. I would have to say that I am a person that has always worked for the best of the community and has always put the community before myself, and it's not myself, and that eventually I'll get appreciated for the things I've done, but I also know that I rub people the wrong way. I'm one of those very hard but easy to work with. I will very much bring up my point of view, and I don't kowtow to anyone. I don't kiss ass. I know who I am. I know what things need to be done, and so when things need to get done, I'll step up and do it. I have a reputation between being able to cook for 150 people to fixing generators and
Yes.
doing plumbing and building things, and all that is who I am. My former partner would always tell everyone that I could build a house from the ground up.
So what's the biggest misconception about you?
People are afraid of me. I know that. They see me and they think that I'm going to bite their head off. I'm going to take them off, tie them up, and beat them to death.
Some people would like that.
Some people would like that. But they don't understand that I'm this big leather daddy. Even from when I was 19 years old, there's this guy that he was an orphan, and when he became 18, he was dumped out on the street, and he was gone to fend for himself, and he was constantly just trying to get things because he didn't get everything he should have had. And one of the things that he did is when he was in the bar and he had a little too much drugs or a little too much drink, was a little too hyper and just he would come over, wrap his arms around me, put his head on my lap and fall asleep.
Oh.
And he did that many times. I was his big brother. Even though he was older than I am, he saw me as his big brother.
That's very sweet.
There's a lot of men out there that they call me daddy, or they come up to me and I put my arms around them and hold them and look in their eyes and hold their head. They feel safe. And my current boyfriend feels the same way. He feels so safe around me. And he knows I'm not going to hurt him. And
That's
so
beautiful.
The biggest misconception is that I'm to be afraid of.
Brent Sweer, this has been an amazing interview. I thank you very much for your participation in Inside Leather History at Fireside Chat. Thank you for welcoming us into your home for the fire. And again, I'm very grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Wow.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out the Fireside Chat channel for more chapters in the history of leather. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe.